Welcome to the Beyond the River podcast. Here's your host, Tyler Ulrich. All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Beyond the River podcast. I'm here in the studio with Don Kelly of the Wellsboro Tackle Shack. You want to say, hey, Don, give yourself a little introduction?
Yeah, Don Kelly from the Tackle Shacks. I really appreciate you having me over here. We've been at the Tackle Shack for 10 years now this year, so it's kind of nice to be able to come over and talk a little bit about it here today.
Yeah, and one of the things that primarily interests me is I'm kind of wondering how you got from kind of the position where I'm at, where you graduated with a degree in fisheries biology from Mansfield, correct?
Right, yeah.
Which is, this is my last week of school and I'm graduating. I'm wondering how you went from there to then owning the Tackle Shack and then to getting where you are now.
I've got a really long history in retail. I started working, picking weeds outside a bait shop when I was about 13 years old, and just kind of stayed in retail for a while. I worked for Orvis for 5 years, and then somewhere in there, parents said, "Hey, you're going to college," and business just really didn't interest me. Fisheries biology, on the other hand, is a nice subject and a lot to learn from. So I ended up here at Mansfield. Thought about different internships with going to Alaska and all that other fun stuff. They said, "Hey, if you want to do something in retail, you can do that." So I ended up going down to TCO, working with them for a little while, and just knew kind of retail was going to be my thing. It's I like dealing with the people every day. It's the fish are awesome. I love helping out with all the habitat projects and everything. But for me, it's getting out there and helping people catch fish every day is really what I like to do. And right around the time I was about to graduate, this shop came up for sale, so we ended up buying it. It's a whole family operation. You see me there every day. I'm the one that does most of the daily activities there, but my whole family's involved with it.
So is it something that was passed down in your lineage, or was it from a different owner to you?
This shop? No. The previous owner passed away, unfortunately, and it just happened to be, they said, right around the same time I was going to be graduating school. Timing was unfortunate for them, but very good for us.
Yeah. And was it always called the Tackle Shack?
It was called the Tackle Shack. When we bought it, I dropped the because it just really drove me nuts looking for something in the phone book and forgetting to find the. So
yeah, makes sense. And so I know you're doing a lot with the shop now, but how is the shop? How have you kind of evolved the shop from when you first took it over? Like, what was it like then, and then what have you done since to get it to where it is now?
If you saw the pictures from when we opened up, it's completely different. I mean, we started with a bare bones inventory. I bought the shop, had a senior project to finish, and finals and everything to finish up before graduating, and trout season was about to open then. So we're running back and forth trying to get all this stuff done. I had a couple $1,000s in inventory. I was like, no, we have to be open Friday before trout season. It's the busiest day of the year for pretty much any fishing retail store in Pennsylvania. So we opened up with a couple products and really pushed through the next couple of years building the inventory to what we have today. When we started out, we started more with the conventional side of fishing because it just seemed like a better fit for me. There's a lot of guys fishing worms and fishing for bass, and I didn't want to get stuck in just one area of fishing. So we worked on building up the conventional side first, and then once we got that all set to where I wanted it to, we started over the last, I'd say, 4 or 5 years really focusing on the fly fishing and building that section of the business up now.
Mm-hmm. And, I've noticed in the shop, you kind of, even just in recent times, you've had more of the fly tying stuff. Is that something you're continuing to evolve? I know with Ryan there.
Yeah, it's Ryan's been a big help to me. He's obviously very passionate about what he does, but a lot of my background, that's where I come from too. It's like I said, I worked for Orvis for 5 years, and if I didn't own this shop, I probably would have went back working for them for a while too. I had a great boss down there. We really enjoyed working there, but it just wasn't where I thought the focus needed to be when we started out. Once we got the other side of it built up, I thought that's where we started getting the fly fishing thing really going here. And the fly tying's been a new addition. Not a new addition, but building it out's been a new addition here the last few years. We really put a lot of time and energy into getting that all set up. There's just not a big fly tying area or a good big fly tying shop in the region, and we thought it'd be a good fit for us.
Yeah, I know me personally because I do sell my own flies a little bit. That's something you talked to me. That's how you said that's what you used to do to get your beer money back in
Oh,
college.
yeah. When I was in Mansfield, I tied mostly saltwater stuff, and we'd be doing. They're basically mangrove. They're called mangrove minnows. They were big muddler minnow for saltwater, pretty much, and we'd tie until midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and then pump out all these orders and ship them down to Florida. And like I said, just beer money in college.
Yeah. And so I do a little bit of that now since I stepped away from some work study positions due to some things that were going on at school. But I'm not very organized, as you can see from my room. Like, this was not like this an hour ago. It was a disaster. But I do a lot of things last minute, and it's been super nice, especially with your expanding fly tying section. I know I was there yesterday on my way home from the stream. I stopped by, I said hey to Ryan, and like grabbed a few things. He's like, "What are you doing here?" I mean, and I'm like, I don't have the stuff I need. I got an order I got to ship out tomorrow. But I think I've been there 4 or 5 times in the last 2 weeks. So.
Yeah, and I think fly tying is one of the few things that you can buy so much stuff online now, but with materials, it's so hard to buy stuff online without seeing it because even the shades of olive can vary batch to batch, and it's I feel like that's something you really got to put your hands on and make sure you're getting the right stuff too.
Yeah, and that's even why I was in the shop yesterday, is because I bought this chenille online for stoneflies, and it wasn't what I wanted because I did buy it online, and so I'm like, well, great. And unfortunately, saved. It's a decent drive from here, but definitely close enough where emergency stop, so I can get those and tie those flies and get them out, and see that I see it, and I know that that's exactly what I need. Plus, it's always nice to say hey. Plus, I don't know your dog's name.
Owen. Yeah.
Owen, but say hey to Owen. He was pretty gassed yesterday. He was passed out on the floor.
Yeah, my vicious guard dog. Whole day's on the floor most of the day.
Yeah, but it's always a nice greeting. He's always there at the door. Does he stay in the shop full time or?
Oh yeah, he's always there for there. Yeah, he comes with me on vacation and whatnot, and but other times he's hanging out there all day.
So, what kind of emphasis do you guys? I know you personally do a lot of stuff with the community. Like you said, you do the stocking and the. I know you have this thing coming up this weekend, the Women in Fly Fishing Seminar.
Yeah.
What kind of public outreach and stuff do you do, and how do you try to get the public involved in your business?
We started out mostly working with the local bass club in particular on a lot of these habitat projects. But between all the organizations, they're just doing some phenomenal work around here. I mean, between Trout Unlimited, the local bass clubs, a lot of these other smaller organizations putting on kids events and whatnot, and it's what I like to help out with and get back to like the fisheries biology side of it. NESMIC, that was one of our big projects. And between us, the Bass Club, the National Fish Habitat Partnership, we were able to get about $30,000 or $40,000 from Shell and put that project together. And with that, we were able to get the whole community involved, and we had people out there building stuff. And these fish habitats, negative 20-degree weather the one winter, it's just brutal out there. But I think it's all important to help the fishery, and it's like obviously it's good publicity for the business, but more so it's ensuring that we're going to have these good fisheries for years to
come. So when people come into the shop, what can they expect?
Well, for one, they're going to get greeted by Owen. I'm probably going to lick you to death, but he's pretty happy when customers come in. And we really focus on helping people catch more fish every day. We're glad to answer any questions that they can ask. We've got fly fishing stuff, spin fishing stuff, bait casters. And my experience over the last course of my lifetime is pretty diversified, from fly fishing for trout all over Pennsylvania to bass fishing, chasing muskies, and we really pride ourselves on being able to answer your questions and point you in the right direction to hopefully catch some more fish.
And that's one of the things I've noticed looking at following the Tackle Shack, following you on social media, and just knowing you in general, is you fish for a lot of different stuff. And so you said your roots were more brook trout, fly fishing, that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I grew up in the southeast part of the state, so I wouldn't say brook trout, fly fishing, but just I started out just like everybody else, catching bass and bluegills with worms and a bobber, and then just got really interested in fly fishing. We have a cabin on Penns Creek down in the center part of the state, so I grew up kind of fishing, originally with crayfish tails and whatnot and catching trout, and then evolved into fly fishing down there. The stream I grew up on, though, was the east branch of the Brandywine, but even then, like I said, we fly fish for trout, maybe chase some carp around. a little bit of bass, but then still Wednesday, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday nights, we'd be fishing bass tournaments with conventional gear too. So I'm just completely interested in all ways to catch fish. I really can't just sit down and enjoy just one type of fishing. It all really interests me. Like lately, I've been messing around with this Euro nymphing that you guys do.
Yeah.
Very different way of fishing than the tenkara fishing I've been having a lot of fun with too.
Yeah, I mean, that tenkara is pretty similar to what we do.
It's
in a
very
way.
similar. Yeah. It's,
I saw you were doing that on the lake. I don't know how that works on the lake.
Hamilton's kind of cheating. It's just you got that creek coming into the lake, so I wouldn't consider that lake fishing.
Yeah. But the shop location and your love for all species rather than just one, which I tend to be more of a trout guy myself.
Mm-hmm.
I do enjoy other species, but when it comes down to it, that's what I'm gonna choose. The shop's located in a great spot.
Mm-hmm.
There's Pine Creek is right there, which receives an. I drove by yesterday and they were fresh stocking again there at the bridge. Plus you have the 2 reservoirs. How do you think that's impacted your business? I know I was in the shop the one day and some guy came down from New York to buy bait.
Yeah, and we have a really diverse fishery here. I mean, everybody knows Pine Creek. Everybody knows the trout fishing down through there. But really, we have so many other fish to fish for. We have 7 lakes in Tioga County. We have Lima Run over in Potter County. All these little brook trout streams. But in the lakes, we've got smallmouth, largemouth, walleye, hybrid stripers, tiger muskies and muskies, and all kinds of panfish. It's a really diversified fishery. One of the few places you can go, within a half-hour's drive and really catch whatever you want. I mean, other than pike and a handful of other fish, we've got it all right here.
Mm-hmm. So I know you spend a lot of time on the ice.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, what's the intrigue of ice fishing? I can't personally get behind it.
It's if you live in Tioga County, it's something you just have to do because it's one of the few areas of the state that gets a good ice season every single year. I've been here in this area about 14 years now since I started college. I've never seen less than a month of ice fishing, and you get south of 80 and their ice season's up in the air every year. The only similar region would be like over in the Poconos, and it's something to do in the winter. It's a lot of fun. I mean, catching bluegills that are 7-8 inches on these little tiny rods is just a blast. It's kind of like catching brook trout. It's not terribly difficult, but they're willing to take flies or different jigs and whatnot. And we catch a whole bunch of them, and it's just a lot of fun. And really, what else are we gonna do until the creeks thaw out? Even Pine Creek's frozen solid for a good majority of the season. You get over to Potter County, down Center County in that area, they've got those streams that are open year round, but a good majority of our stuff is frozen.
Yeah. See, when you relate it to brook trout, I can get behind it. It makes sense to me. But when to me, it's just, it seems like just sitting on the ice, like freezing above.
If we were talking about 50 years ago, it would have been. But today's technology, it's made it so much more comfortable and so much easier and faster to find fish. I mean, the electronics are incredible. The clothing's incredible. I mean, you can stay so much warmer out there. You're not sitting on a bucket freezing your ass off anymore. You can buy a hut and sit in there and put a heater in there, and it's just like sitting in here like we are today. It's nice and warm and a lot of fun.
Yeah. So you talked a lot about helping put people on fish. That's one of your goals at the shop. Mm-hmm. For youth trout season, I wanted to be that little kid that you took out. That how big was that? It was Palomino. It was like 10.6 pounds.
Yeah, that's the biggest stock trout I've ever seen. I've seen some big lake run stuff out of Lake Ontario, but stock trout, that's hands down the biggest trout I've ever seen.
Was that a relative? Was that just a kid from the community?
No, that's one of our regular customers.
Yeah.
He's, it's funny. Everybody talks about these kids not being interested in fishing, but the ones that I meet are just so into it, so focused. Like probably like me and you were. Mm-hmm. We were kids, and that particular kid Colgan, and he just is an outstanding little fisherman. They brought that fish in. They kept it in the cooler. They specifically wanted to stop by and show it to me. I mean, really neat.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so you weren't actually with him?
No.
Oh, okay. No. But so he was. I remember seeing that picture on the Tackle Shack Facebook page. I was fishing the college comp that Dan hosted, and I was sitting on the bank because it was last session. Pulled it up on Facebook. I screenshot it, sent it to Dan. I'm like, I can't believe I'm sitting here catching wild trout, and I could have caught a 10-pound manner. I've never caught a Palomino, and I want to so bad.
Yeah, If you live in Pennsylvania, that's it. You just have to. It's
Yeah.
like them or not, there's something you got to check off the bucket list.
And I know even Ryan has had kids come to him in the shop like, hey, you're the streamer junkie, and then he's given them tips and he's gone fishing with them too. So it's really cool that there's this place for, kids like that to come up and be like, even if they don't necessarily have parents that like to fish, but then they can kind of work with their parents, and then they can get more pumped up. Because there's a lot of kids these days sitting indoors playing video games, which there's nothing wrong with. But we have this beautiful environment that definitely would go to waste if no one used it.
It's funny. Like I said, there's a lot of kids sitting indoors never getting to experience this. But we have our annual Kids Fishing Derby. This year it's going to be the 20th annual Kids Derby up in Kawaneski. And those little kids, they catch one that's 4 inches, a little tiny bluegill, or these massive carp. They're just so excited. And man, you look at them and you really see what fishing's supposed to be about, and it's just having an absolute blast and enjoying every minute of being out there.
It is kind of, I see that because that can be very humbling. Because when you get experience like we are, I'm sure we have a lot more fishing left to do. But I think there's times, especially for me, I'm going to speak for myself, where sometimes you take it for granted. But then you have a bad day of fishing, get kicked in the teeth, and then it puts it in perspective, and you enjoy it a little bit more. But yeah, it's definitely cool to see kind of why we started and why we love this so much through them.
Yeah, it's like we go out and catch bluegills. It's just something to pass time, and you catch them, throw them back, don't think anything of it. And these little guys are just big smile on their face and just so happy they caught a fish, and they want to show it to all their friends and get pictures of it. It's like I said, what's fishing's supposed to be about.
Yeah, I have this cousin, his name is Ryan, and my grandfather just got a boat a couple of years ago, since now he's retired. And he also kind of epitomizes like what it means to be like a fisherman. Like he's just like, it's not catching, like he really just wants to sit in the middle of the lake, soak up the sun. And I don't know how he lucked into this muskie. He caught a muskie on like an inch long spoon, and like he was fishing monofilament, and like put it right in the corner of his mouth where the mono couldn't hit it, and like brought it. It was insane. I was with him. It was cool, and awesome to spend time with my grandfather. But he took my cousin Ryan out a couple times, and they struggled to catch some fish. They had some funny stories, but they were struggling to catch fish. And then I went with them, and I just rigged like a little drop shot thing for like some perch and stuff. And then we finally got him to catch a few perch, because he was to the point where he didn't believe there's any fish in the lake. And then he got the fish, and he was playing with it, and then, telling him you got to put it back, that we don't hurt it. But definitely cool to see that experience him experience that fish. Plus also helped out with a few like kids fly fishing things. And when they, they learning how to cast, which is, not even fishing, but they get excited when they finally figure it out, because that's not the easiest thing to do.
No, I had a little kid that wanted to learn how to tie flies, and we've been trying to get courses set up at the shop for a couple of years now, and I just don't have the room. Like, we keep expanding and growing, and I just don't have that extra room to set up tables and whatnot. But I promised this guy, I said, why don't you bring him out here and I'll teach him. And so he'd come down every week, and we'd sit there after hours, and I taught him how to tie a pheasant tail and a woolly bugger and a couple basic things. And he was just so happy to tie these things. He didn't even fly fish yet. He just wanted to learn how to tie flies. But
yeah, and even still, like, I tie a lot of flies. Especially now, working with Ryan a lot, I tie a lot of these cool streamer things. I throw the same streamer every time. Not those cool ones I tie. They just sit in the box. But, but that's definitely really cool that there's that opportunity for the kids through the tackle shack and whatnot. As far as, so what current kids events do you already have? Is it just help out with the fish derby? Do you have any specific ones that the tackle shack puts on, or is it more helping out with other ones that go on?
Most of the stuff that I do, I try to link up with other organizations. Any project you do, it involves a lot of people. I mean, it's I get credit for a lot of stuff that I really shouldn't, because they're big group efforts. These habitat projects, the kids derbies, the fishing tournaments. I mean, it really takes a whole team of people to get these things to put on successfully. This kids derby, it was started by Ron Van Zyl 20 years ago. And he still helps out. I've helped plan it. I do a lot of the advertising stuff, but it takes the whole Bass Club to really get things squared away there. That's really the only kid-specific thing we have going on this year anyway. But like I said, we try to help them out whenever we can. That Youth Mentor Trout Day's one of our favorite things since they started that. And
It's a lot like youth turkey season. I know that's something I always did. We don't have that in New York, a youth day for trout season. We have the youth turkey hunt, and I think that's about it. I think there might be a youth day of bow for deer.
The youth season was such a shame here. The first couple years they started it, the first year they ever had it statewide, our lakes and everything were still frozen solid. It was early April and everything was just iced up, locked up completely. And then the last 3 years it snowed. It was absolutely miserable. This is the first one this year that was actually nice out and beautiful, and the kids had a lot of fun.
So on top of, you said that's the only one you really have for kids, but from other than that, what other programs do you have going on? I know you have the one going on this weekend.
Yeah, we have the women's fly fishing thing. We're really excited about that. I've been trying to plan that for a couple of years. We have Amity Daniel from the Fish Commission coming up. She's going to be heading that Friday and Saturday. I think we have 20 or 21 women coming, and that should be a lot of fun. And then after that, we have guys from Cortland coming down, putting on a nymphing demo. They came down last year to do some Euro nymphing talks. This year it's going to be a little bit more diversified, talk about various different types of nymphing, including the Euro nymphing and indicator fishing and all that. The end of the month, Dave Rothrock's working with him to plan some nymphing classes as well, and some beginner fly fishing classes. And then once we get into the summer, we got our big bass tournaments coming up. The 3-day bass tournament's been something that we've really prided ourselves on the last few years. It's one of the probably the most sought after tournament in the area now. We limit it to 30 boats. It fills up in like 3 days. It's a good time.
I mean, I was back here because I took summer classes last year.
Mm-hmm.
I remember being at Sheets, and there was just guys everywhere, just bass boats everywhere. So definitely cool to see. I wouldn't mind coming to watch the weigh-in for that.
Yeah, that's really fun.
Yeah, well, and that's on Kawaneski, right?
It's 3 days. When we started it out, it was originally supposed to be 3 days, 3 different lakes. So we started out on Kawaneski. The second day was on Tioga, and the last day was on Hammond.
Yeah.
Since then, we've reversed it, so they finished on Kawaneski. Last year was a complete blowout season, so it rained and the 2 lakes were flooded. So we fished 3 days on Kawaneski.
I mean, and those are some lakes that we shocked for class. I'm sure maybe you did back in the day.
Yeah.
And there's some big bass in there.
Yeah, last year these, I believe they're Mansfield students. Yeah, they were students, graduated, but they ended up bringing the biggest bag I've ever seen in a bass tournament around here. It was like 26 pounds for 6 fish, and 2 just absolute giant largemouth.
Yeah, that's sweet. So in terms of the shop and where you're headed, what are your goals? How you want to move forward? How would you like to continue advancing the shop if you have the opportunity?
Well, we got a lot of plans. So right now, our biggest concern is building an online store. That's hopefully should be up and running in September, October this year. We had planned to do that about 3 years ago, and it was way more work and a lot more back-end logistics than I was expecting. So I've been learning a lot over the last few years, and I think we'll finally be ready to move forward with that this year. And then eventually we'll be expanding the shop. I mean, I'm out of room there. There's a couple setup issues. I don't really like the short ceilings and whatnot. And eventually that's going to change, but not tomorrow, probably within the next 5 years though.
So as a business owner and then as a fisherman, what are some of your favorite moments in both those areas?
Let's see. Favorite moments in business. And the favorite moments in business is probably the easier ones. Yeah. When guys like that little kid Colgan come in and just have the biggest smile on their face, and they're telling me all about these fish, that's what makes my job worth doing every day. And we get to see it over and over all summer. Sometimes it's kids coming up for a weekend of fishing or tourists in town for a day, and sometimes it's these guys winning big bass tournaments. Really good fishermen, and it never gets old. Somebody telling us about this great fish they caught, or sometimes the one that got away, but for the ones they caught. And fishing, I don't know. It's like I said, I enjoy every minute being out there. It's anytime I can get away from the shop and be on the water, I'm pretty happy. Catching big fish, is never disappointing. I'd say the few bigger muskies I've caught are definitely highlights.
That's definitely one of my goals. I want to get a muskie on the fly.
they're the most frustrating fish I've ever fished for. Like I've seen 7 or 8 in a day, and they follow you back to the boat and they just swim away.
Yeah, trout can be that way sometimes too, for sure. So what's kind of the biggest thing you've learned, in your 10 years, celebrating 10 years that came out like last week? And so what's the biggest thing you've learned, along the way from that?
It's definitely the importance of having good contacts and good relationships with, for one, my vendors, but with other businesses, and constantly learning from other people. I've got friends that own shops all across the state. I love stopping in and seeing how they're doing things, and we'll bounce ideas off each other. It's never, you can't ever wake up and think you know it all. You just got to kind of constantly learn something new every day, and that's really what I think has helped us build the business. The first couple of years where you think like, oh yeah, we've got the biggest shop in the area, it's just all gonna, people are just gonna come here and spend money, and it's just not how it works. I mean, you really got to work at it, and it's helped a lot surrounding myself with a lot of good people that if I don't know the answer to something, I can call them and they can help me out.
Mm-hmm. And I kind of like that. That's one of the things that I try to do is whenever one of the big things I'm excited about now is mousing. I have a mouse simulator on the windowsill. But I didn't know, and I went out a couple times, and I was surprised at how many takes I actually got. Mm-hmm. But I couldn't hook any. Mm-hmm. And so I was that's when I first talked to Ryan. I messaged him and said, hey, what am I doing wrong? And I think it's so valuable, never to be afraid to admit, when you don't know something, mm-hmm. and just ask. And I've learned so much from doing that. And it's great that's how you've helped evolve your business and whatnot.
Yeah, and I think it's good to know what you're good at, but it's better to know what you're not good at, because it's much easier to solve problems if you realize it's just not something you're good at doing, and you gotta meet people that can help you along the way to fill in those spots. Me and Ryan are constantly bouncing ideas back off each other in the shop too, and even just regarding fly fishing, just different leader setups and this and that, and just he obviously gets much more time on the water than I do, and just really interesting hearing how his perspective on something, or any of my other customers, just talking to them and seeing their perspectives on why you do things the way you do. And with fishing, you find there's a lot of right ways to do the same thing. There's some wrong ways, but if you're catching fish, there's a lot of right ways to do it, and how we all set up things is really fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's definitely no one set way, like you said, because I know a lot of people say this way, this way, this way, but as far as I'm concerned, if you're catching fish, it ain't broke, don't fix it. Mm-hmm. So I know, especially with leader setups, a lot of the ear nymphing, a lot of people experiment with different leader combinations. Mm-hmm. I fish the same leader forever now, and it's worked for me. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's coiled, it's disgusting, it's a year old now, but it still works, so I'm not going to change it. But to take that one step further, the whole basis of my brand, Beyond the River, is kind of the lessons learned from on the water, and how you kind of already explained some of that, what you learned through business. But what's kind of the greatest life lesson or lesson you've learned from just fishing and being an outdoorsman?
Man, that's a tough question. The greatest life lesson I've ever learned. I don't know. I think the one thing is to really just appreciate the time you do get on the water, or just time away from work. I mean, the one thing I learned early on in my business, I worked there 7 days a week for years, and I started taking a little bit of time off. I'd close early on Tuesdays, but still, I'd be there months and months on end sometimes without getting a break, and which is important. You need to do that, I think, to build your business. But once I got to a certain point, you realize you're going to burn yourself out if you don't get some time on the water. Yeah. And that's, over the last few years, I've really come to appreciate that. I don't get too many of those 8-10 hour fishing trips, but I'll get out for 20 minutes, a half hour here and there, just enough to decompress and relax a little and catch a few fish.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, it's definitely a good lesson. Take advantage of time in your water. I know I do try to get out for those longer trips, but I have been making some of the shorter trips, and they have been refreshing, especially in these as the school winds down, the stress starts to build.
And I find it's so easy to make excuses not to do stuff. like, oh no, I got that test tomorrow. I've got a meeting at 6 o'clock or something, and you make these excuses to not go fishing, but really you could have just snuck away for 20 minutes, made a few casts, maybe caught a fish, maybe you don't. But either way, you're getting out there for a little bit each day and getting some time on the water.
Yeah, for sure. What are some of the tough things you had to go through with the business?
I tell you, it's the first year. It sounds so much more fun than it is. Like, don't get me wrong, I love every day of my job, but it is hard work. I mean, you put in a lot of hours, and I guess you don't really realize that when you first start up. It's kind of like, wow, I'm finally doing what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, and you come into a lot of hard patches. Like I said, you don't just open up a shop and people come out there. You gotta do a lot of advertising. You gotta get on the ground and meet a lot of people and figure out ways to bring people into your store. The first 3-4 years are just brutal. Like I said, I enjoy every minute of it, but just looking back, like I think sometimes, like, what was I thinking? And even Ryan's like, man, I can't believe you used to do this by yourself. And it's over time that starts getting easier. I mean, you start getting a feeling for what works and what doesn't. Finding the right products that customers like and ones that don't sell. That's a constant learning curve. But it's a lot of work.
Making sure you gotta get Ryan's shop. Ryan's completely botched that. I was just gonna roast Ryan. I just get his flies out of the shop because they don't catch any fish. But would have been better if I didn't stutter. But so looking back, if you had to make the decision over again, I take it you would do it exactly the same way.
One of the benefits of starting the way we did was with no inventory. Pretty much, at one point I had pretty much no money. I'm living on the couch at the shop. The one benefit with that is you don't have enough money to sink into things that don't work. So you got to find ways to build the business without, that are essentially free. Like you got to figure out how to get people in your store. And I think that makes you smarter, and it makes you really think about every penny you're spending to do it more effectively. Like I said, if you could just sit there and dump $20,000 into radio advertising and something, you don't learn those lessons, I don't think. So it's I wouldn't want to go through it again, but I certainly think that's the way I would have done it again if I had to.
So if you had to quickly, like 10-second sales pitch describe the Tackle Shack, how would you do that?
10-second sales pitch to Tackle Shack. Yeah, it's 10 seconds.
I'll give you 20.
20 seconds, okay. It'd be like every one of my TV commercials. I get at least 30 there.
Okay.
But it's I really feel if you come to the Tackle Shack, we're going to help you have a great day of fishing. That's why we put it on the front of our store. And a great day of fishing is different to everybody. Sometimes it's catching big fish, sometimes it's catching numbers, sometimes it's just getting out there and enjoying the waterways. And I feel like we can point people in the right direction, no matter what their fishing goals are. And that's really what we pride ourselves on.
And I definitely can speak to that. I think I'm a better fisherman for having known you and Ryan, having been to the shop, and it's certainly a dangerous place. I kind of get like, what is it when you, it's on the tip of my tongue, where you're shopping, impulse buying. I tend to impulse buy when I'm around all that, because I really don't love to tie flies that much. I'd rather go fishing compared to tying flies, but I love the look of flies, and I want my flies to look like that, so I love to tie and try to mimic that stuff. And when I just get into, especially now that you're expanding your fly tying stuff a lot, it's just dangerous for the wallet.
It happens like that for everybody. I own a business, and I walk into another shop, and I still end up spending $100. Like, it's just like, oh, those are cool, and that fly pattern's pretty neat, or these lures are different. I haven't seen those before. And next thing you know, you're buying a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah. Just a fishing addict.
It is
problem, I guess.
So in terms of following on social media, how to get in contact with the shop, location, how does someone go about doing that?
I'm pretty easy to find. We do a lot on social media. Our Facebook page is easy to find. Just type in Tackle Shack on Facebook. It should pop right up. We're also on Twitter, Instagram. I don't do much on Twitter, but we're on Instagram, Fishbrain. It's just kind of like a fish tracker app. And otherwise, give me a call at the shop. My number is 570-724-5138, or shoot us an email at tackleshack@frontiernet.net. Like I said, visit our website. It's wellsborotackleshack.com, and most of that information is listed right there too.
Mm-hmm. And I'll put all that information in the description of this for that.
Yeah.
Plus, stop into the shop.
Yeah, stop in. We're always glad to see everybody.
Get licked by Owen if he's not passed out on the ground for being too tired. But is there anything else you'd like to add, Don, before we?
I don't really have much to add. I'd say I follow all your stuff. You really got a good thing going here. You're definitely starting out really nice, doing a lot of good stuff. It's nice to see guys that are pursuing more than just catching fish, and really bringing the stuff to other people.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you coming on the show. Like I said, I'll put all that information down in the description, how to get a hold of Don and Tackle Shack, all their social medias and whatnot. And just thanks, Don. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.